Hi, welcome to our interview, Transitioning and Disability. I'm so happy to be joined by our guest, the amazing Corinne. Um, Corinne, would you like to introduce yourself? You probably do a better job than I could.
Uh, sure, thank you. So my name is Corin DeFreitas. I am a PhD candidate in geography at the University of British Columbia, where I study cats, gender, and domestic space. Um, I tweet under the handle of the Tweety, which is how I got to know the executive panel here. So I'm very grateful for all the work that you're doing this year to put this all together.
Thank you so much. It's honestly so great to have you here. We love your Twitter. I love your Twitter. It's everything.
For this guy.
Oh, hello, cutie. I also love. I love your topic, your research topic as well. It's like cats gender. I I just think it's so fascinating. It's great. But yeah, I guess I should introduce myself. I did not introduce myself. So I'm your host, Linda Corcoran. I am a student in food science in Ireland, and I use both they, them, and she, her pronouns. And I am with Disabled in Higher Ed. That was, should have done that first, but anyway, moving on to disability in higher education. It can be quite difficult, is quite difficult. Academia doesn't like accommodating us whatsoever. It's built completely inaccessibly. I guess, Corinne, what has been your experience of being disabled in higher education? That's a big question.
Yeah, how much time do we have? I think, well, you hit on a huge part, which is that academia is not designed for disabled scholars. In fact, it's designed to keep us out. That is how they maintain this air of exclusivity by exclusion. And so it's a space that's designed to accommodate particular body minds at the expense of other body minds. And so it is a challenge to be disabled in academia. It's a challenge just logistically navigating a situation like that your needs are almost never anticipated, and when they are anticipated, it's you're viewed as an exception. Your needs are sort of a retrofit, and that just creates so much additional labor that our peers don't have to do, and I don't think that there's much of an understanding of that, just how much time and energy goes into navigating academia as a disabled scholar. And we end up also having to do a lot of the labor of making a space for ourselves too, which is just one more thing that on top of the extra bureaucracy that we have to navigate, just one more thing for us to do. So I think often we get to spend frustratingly little time doing the things that we're actually in academia to do, doing our research, contributing to scholarly conversations, contributing to knowledge production. And that's disappointing and frustrating for disabled academics. And it's also, I always hate to be like, it's bad for the university because we shouldn't have to instrumentalize ourselves. We shouldn't have to instrumentalize our disabilities, but frankly, it is bad for the university. It means that our voices, our contributions aren't included, and frankly ought to be.
100%. I always, I don't like to do it. Like you said, it's sort of, we should be allowed to be here and exist as people and contribute without having to say, oh, look at all the great things I'm going to give you if you let me be here, if you let me actually access this content. But it has to be done to convince them that we're allowed to be here, it's frustrating. But I guess when you add any other minority identity on top of that, it gets even worse, because academia only likes to let people have one other. And it's sort of like, you got the disability, you're not allowed to have anything else. What do you mean you want another part of your identity to be brought in and acknowledged?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess I don't know how much you want to talk about transitioning. I know it's what we're here to talk about, but tell us, what do you want to tell us about, I guess, your story?
Oh, wow. That's a
These are big questions, sorry.
they are big questions. No, it's great. And I'm happy to talk about any of it. So if I get started and you're like, I'd like to follow up on that, please feel free. Yeah, so it's interesting because I've oh, this cuts a lot of ways. So in terms of the culture of academia, like you said, it's really hard to carry multiple marginalized identities in academia. You're kind of allowed one, if that. So in a structural sense, kind of, I know that my needs already won't be met, and I have to fight for them on the disability front. Similarly, with respect to being trans, and then there are a lot of fun things that bubble up when you bring those together, right? Which is kind of what the concept of intersectionality gets at in the first place. But and I started my transition during the pandemic. It's hard to say like when I came out as trans per se, because for a long time I've just been like, any pronouns are fine, whatever. I don't think for me that it clicked that I was trans until the pandemic. Spending a little time with myself, and so I haven't brought this disabled body in transition into the space of my department yet, which is going to be really interesting, I think. And so I'm not actually sure how that's going to shake out. The people who I've maintained close contact with throughout the pandemic are friends and collaborators who I trust and are supportive of me, etc. So we have that sort of relationship. So I don't know what that's going to be like, and the question of like what that's going to be like is definitely something I've thought a bit about, and we'll find out. Just based on the ways that other people's gender identities have been handled in similar situations, and it's everything from the contributions you make, the sort of scholarship you do, if it is informed by, and it always is, informed by identities that you carry, how you move through the world, to just like really basic stuff like being able to pee in the department. And the fact that my department in particular, we've brought up for years and years the need to have a gender neutral washroom. Do we have one yet? No. And requests for one have been met by things like, oh, you can just walk to like the nest, which is kind of the student union building, which is across campus, which as a disabled person is a bit of an issue. We want, if we have a new bathroom installed, we want it to also have a shower so that people can cycle in. It's like, are those really like the same level of urgency, honestly? So there's stuff like that. But like I said, this cuts a couple of ways because also like already existing in academic spaces, as someone who's not supposed to exist in those spaces, as a disabled person, also as a queer person, but I definitely feel it's much harder for me with my disability to exist in those spaces. It's a bit liberating because I kind of have nothing to lose. So I don't like, I think I would probably be quite a bit more concerned about transitioning if I wasn't already a problem. I don't know how else to say this. And so yeah, the fact that kind of like I have nothing to lose. I already
I completely get what you're
yeah.
saying. I get it. It's like but you have to consider the disabilities now. You make everyone uncomfortable because you'll call out their language. You insist on your pronouns. Like everyone has to watch what they say around you. And I'm like, why are you saying bigoted stuff to other people?
Right. Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So and the fact that I'm not, because I know how hostile academia can be towards disabled people, towards trans people, towards people of color, anyone who really isn't a cis het non-disabled white man. I have I kind of I know what my my prospects are in the academy. I know that finding an academic job, finding a tenure track job is, possible. It's probably impossible. So again, I have nothing to lose, and so it's crushing, but also liberating. I guess.
Yeah, I completely get having nothing to lose though. Like when I decided to, I guess, use both pronouns as opposed to just one, I was kind of like, I'm already a disabled queer person anyway.
Might as well, right?
Yeah, like I might as well be a pain in the ass as far as they're concerned, because they're probably not gonna give me a job anyway. So I might as well be happy.
Exactly. Yep. Totally. Which is, and it's so the problem with that, that you probably won't get a job anyways. So I do teach one course at a local 2-year low barrier institution. And the difference that it makes to my students to, come in and introduce myself in the beginning of the term and say that I am trans, that I am queer, that I am disabled, that I am bringing all of these things into this course, into my teaching, et cetera. And that it influences, my pedagogy, and influences how I teach in a way that I think makes the classroom environment less hostile. But also just the way that students who also carry those identities react to that is it's incredible, and the ways that it's so obvious that they haven't had the space to bring themselves fully into higher ed, into the work that they're doing, which is really really sad. It means we're not educating whole people. And so it's one more reason why, again, the university should want us, because we make it possible for people to bring their whole selves into their work, into the classroom.
It's really sad. Like I know so many people say, I got into this area because I've never seen anyone like me in this area, and you'd like to think it's improving, but unfortunately it's not, because they keep hiring cis, straight, het, non-disabled white men.
Yeah, absolutely. And as one thing that I've noticed as a disabled person in the academy is that when I do actually see disabled scholars, in tenure track positions, being researchers, being instructors, professors, etc., it's not because they came up through all of that training with a disability. It's often that they acquired their disability after being hired, usually after they got tenure. So the whole, and I think you actually presented on this last year too, if I remember correctly. It was a really good presentation. That whole pipeline is so deeply flawed. Yeah,
it is. We know so little. Like there's no research whatsoever or very, very little. And it's sort of like, where are these disabled people coming from? How many is there? Do we know? No, because a lot of people who even have invisible disabilities are afraid to disclose it. Even if they had it before they were hired, they're going with no accommodations because they're being told that they're not going to get that tenure track contract. If they ask for them, they're not going to get renewed. They're going to get guilted. They're going to be told that, oh, well, we'll give you that, but you've got to take on extra work to make up for it.
Exactly. And again, what a loss, you know, like imagine the sorts of things that folks could be doing if they were supported in those roles, if they weren't having to fight against the institution, but the institution was actually supporting them. The difference that could make. Yeah, it's super disappointing. And I recently had a conversation with a tenure track professor who is not out as disabled in their day-to-day life, but who had said that even on Twitter they were uncomfortable for a long time liking my tweets about disability in the academy because they were concerned that it might out them as disabled. Like those are the stakes. That's how careful people feel like they have to be, because they feel like they'll be punished for being disabled.
Oh yeah, it's very societal ableism into internalized ableism, the same way that societal homophobia and transphobia and racism can go into internalizing hating your identities. And it can happen with
being able to safely assume those identities too.
Yeah, it's really, really sad. I hate it.
Yeah, me too.
I think everyone hates
the worst. Yeah.
It's very I guess I have spoken on this a bit myself, because as a person who has had disabilities from birth but wasn't diagnosed until teenage years, there was a lot of internalized ableism there. There was a lot of nearly also my parents projecting ableism onto me. It's kind of like, you can't associate with those people. Do you really want to be there? You're not one of those. And it's like, you have to unlearn that.
Definitely. And we see that too in the academy. The folks who've made it oftentimes make it at the expense of disabled colleagues and students. And you know, that need to kind of perform non-disability as a disabled person in the academy. I think some of the worst experiences that I've had have honestly been with disabled scholars who are trying to distance themselves from those identities, from their needs.
Yeah, someone once said it to me. I can't remember who it was. I'll remember afterwards and I'll link it. But they said that it's the only way that that people are surviving in the academy when they have a minority identity, especially disability, is saying that they are the special one. They have overcome everything. And it's a great way to help yourself survive.
Yeah.
But it also is so terrible to everyone else around you.
Yeah, it's completely understandable given the circumstances. But like, once again, what a loss, you know, like imagine if those folks were willing to share some of their strategies, you know, were willing to do, and again, the work of mentoring often falls to the folks who have the least amount of time to do it, because they're, you know, fighting for their own space in the institution, fighting against the institution, etc. But you know, I've often had the thought of like the difference that it would make if I had a mentor who is kind of like, you know, here's how we navigate this, etc. And I'm really lucky that I have an amazing supervisor who, and this shouldn't make her amazing. She's amazing for a lot of reasons. But one thing that I really value about having her as a supervisor is that she will go to bat for me. And I think a lot of folks can't count on that, and aren't able to even be fully transparent with their supervisor about their needs, etc.
Yeah, no, I've had people speak to me and they're like, I have just got my supervisor to accept one of my identities.
Mhm.
And it's like bringing another one in. Now we have to address pronouns. That's not going to go well.
Right.
I've literally just got accommodations.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Exactly.
It's very and I know, you know, it kind of very much depends on your own journey, where you are as a person mentally in your life, because it's so hard to have the capacity to take on all this when you are in a bad situation, when you don't have that person to go to bat to you and you are fighting against everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely.
But I guess why don't we say what has been your favorite thing so far about transitioning?
Oh my God. That's so hard. Oh, there's so much that's so hard. I don't know. I mean, like, I got top surgery 2 weeks ago, so like that's been the big exciting thing. But I don't know. There's so many. It feels. I don't have good words. My face hurts. I don't.
I mean, there's too many things, there's too many good things to count. That is
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
message.
I think my favorite thing about transitioning thus far has been not maybe not my favorite thing. The thing that I want to highlight, I guess, is that I have literally had no interactions with my community, no negative interactions. Like everyone has been so almost aggressively supportive, which is amazing. Um, and I know that that's not something that everyone gets, but I really really value that. And I'm talking about it because that's the thing that has made the difference, sort of throughout my academic journey, and it's kept me. I'm not supposed to be here still, um, in the academy, and it is just because of it's not for lack of desire or determination or whatever. It's just too much for one person to carry, any one person. And so um, that I have a really great uh, community of colleagues, my supervisor, my students are incredible. And just so that's why I guess I want to highlight the support. And it should be like that. It should always be like that. Like support trans people. But I didn't anticipate how supportive folks would be, and it has been so uh, incredible to really be able um, to just feel helped and carried by my community, and that's something that I want for everyone. And it's unfortunate that has to be kind of a survival strategy that has to be sort of you get that sort of care against the wishes of the institution, against the wishes of the academy, the culture of the academy. And again, like imagine if that's just how it was built, that we supported people to be themselves, do their best work, etc. It would be incredible.
Yeah, and there's so many examples, and honestly, that is so great that you have that support. I'm like internally, I'm like screaming because it should be the norm, but it's not the norm, and it's very much. But we'll still highlight it, and we'll be like, yay!
Yes. Yeah.
But like there's so many examples when you look at the academy of things that could have been made so much better, and so much generally they're an easy fix. They're a very easy fix, and they've just not done it because it's not the experience of the people who are in charge. It's not the experience of the majority. For example, the name changes that are just coming in, those policies, like it's just been policy of don't change your name. Doesn't matter what, and like it's not even just trans people who are getting married, it's like just don't change your name.
Right.
Like, that could have been fixed years ago.
Right, yeah.
That shouldn't have been a fight.
Exactly, totally. Yeah, the thing I do not understand is, like, it could be good. Like, why don't we want it to be good? Why don't we want people to have it good? I just continually am asking that question whenever I have to make any
it's
ask.
very much it's very much they're like the academy should be free thinking and pushing the boundaries, but inside the box.
Absolutely.
You have to stay inside the box. You're allowed to push the box a tiny bit, but that's about it. You're doing free thinking wrong.
Right. It is striking how conservative the culture of academia is. Especially, I'm in a department that's known for, really critical radical scholarship. And the disconnect between the scholarship that makes people famous, frankly, and like their actual politics and practices, it's vast. It's really, really quite shocking.
Yeah, no, it is. I've definitely been like I forget sometimes. I think it's the ADHD. I assume everybody is the same as the people I surround myself with, who are just great. Right. And then like I meet someone and they say something bigoted and I'm like, and then they continue and I'm like, oh no.
But again, good job finding those people and count on.
But still, like,
yeah,
it's disappointing.
It is disappointing. It's deeply disappointing, and it could be better. And like you said, it's generally not a terribly difficult fix, and often it's just a matter of asking folks what they need. And for some reason, we don't do that.
No.
Yeah.
The academy is supposed to be devoid of emotions. It's logic. There is no emotions in logic.
My university, the University of British Columbia, when I started, the it's not like the motto, but kind of their little PR catchphrase was a place of mind. And I was like, oh, we don't have bodies here, I guess. Like, none of us are embodied on this campus. How does that work? Like, yeah.
Just a bunch of brains walking around.
Just a bunch of brains. Yep. No gendered bodies, no racialized bodies, no disabled bodies. Yep. Yeah. And I mean, that's the I guess legacy that we're having to actively work against in order to make space for, our brains, our bodies, our body minds. Yeah.
Absolutely. But yeah, I guess we've been talking for quite a while. So is there anything else that you think is really important to bring in? I know we've touched on a lot of topics.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to say. It could go on for hours and hours. I mean, I'm sure I'm going to think of stuff afterwards, but here we are.
Oh yeah, totally, 100%. Thank you so much for being a most amazing guest and for being super open. Thank you so much to your cat for being an awesome guest too.
And thank you very much to you and all of the other folks doing the DEHEM week. You've done an amazing job. I'm really excited to see it happening again this year, and I really appreciate it. I think it makes a big difference.
That's our goal. That's what we want. We're very much blown away by the amount of people who are taking part. Like even just with the roll call, we were like, oh my God, it keeps going.
I guess, okay, so there's a thing to add. Like, we're already here. So like make it possible for us to stay here, make it possible for people to be out and open about all of their identities. Because yeah, it's nobody is doing their best work if they're not able to show up as themselves, if they're not able to get the supports that they need to do that work, right? Um, so, and it should not all just be about the work. Like, we want to have like good work-life balance, etc. And academia makes that really, really hard. And we're supposed to collapse our identities into the work that we do and how much we can produce and whatever. So I don't want to get into that. But like people being able to show up as themselves and be supported um, anywhere makes for happier people doing more interesting things and being better to the people around them. And again, it could be good. Why don't we want it to be good?
Absolutely. No, I 100% agree with you. And yes, thank you so much for being awesome.
Really
We are going to end it here.
sounds good.
And thank you to everyone who listened and watched. And this has been Transitioning in Disability, an interview with the amazing Corinne. And make sure you follow him on Twitter.